Let's be honest. If she's about to admit she has been in love with you since the day you met her, there are things you completely missed. Women do not always reveal love in obvious ways. Sometimes they hide it behind silence, distance, even cold behavior that confuses you. And if you misread those signs, you may have walked away from someone who was already emotionally attached to you in a way that runs deeper than words. And here is the part most men never realize. When a woman falls in love early, she doesn't rush to confess it. She studies you. She watches how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. She listens to the tone of your silence more than your words, and what makes this even more intense is that she builds an emotional memory of you. Every small action you think is forgettable becomes unforgettable to her. The way you smiled once when she was having a bad day. The way you spoke her name when she least expected warmth. She records it all, silently, not on paper, but in feeling, and long before she ever says the words, "I love you," she has already decided something inside her. She has decided whether you are safe to love, whether you are consistent enough to trust, and whether you are the kind of man she can emotionally surrender to without fear, because love for her is not just emotion, it is evaluation, it is safety, it is nervous system response. And when she finally reaches the point where she is about to admit she has loved you since the beginning, it means she has already survived every doubt she had about you and still chose you. But here is what most men misunderstand. By the time she admits it, the emotional story is already written. She is not discovering love in that moment. She is confessing something she has been carrying quietly for a long time. And if you were unaware, it is not because it wasn't there, but because you were never taught how quietly real love can exist in a woman who is trying to protect her own heart. And that is why understanding female psychology is not about manipulation. It is about awareness. It is about noticing what is unsaid, not just what is spoken. Because the truth is, some of the deepest love stories never start with confession. They start with recognition. And if you are listening to this now, you might already be thinking of a woman who never said it directly, but always showed it in fragments, in pauses, in timing, in the way she stayed a little longer than she needed to. Pay attention to that, because what is unspoken often carries the most truth. And once you learn to see it, you will never misread love the same way again. Some truths are quiet, but permanent, and this is one of them. If you are willing to see it clearly now too, what most men never understand is that emotional attachment in a woman does not grow in straight lines. It builds in patterns, in repetitions, in psychological loops that form long before any confession is ever made. When she says she has been in love with you since she met you, she is not talking about a single moment. She is describing a sequence of internal experiences that quietly stacked on top of each other until they became undeniable. In the beginning, she might not have even liked you in the way you think love starts. There is often confusion first. She questions you. She tests you, without calling it a test. She observes how you react when things don't go your way. And if you stayed calm in moments where other men would have become reactive, something shifts inside her perception of you. Not loudly, quietly, almost invisibly. Carl Jung would describe this as projection meeting reality. She projects an idea of what safety feels like, what strength feels like, what emotional stability feels like. And then she slowly compares you against that internal image. Every time you align with it, even slightly, her subconscious begins to attach meaning to your presence. And she doesn't consciously register it as falling in love. She registers it as comfort, familiarity, emotional grounding. This is why so many men miss it completely. They are looking for obvious signals, attention, flirting, direct words. But her psychology does not operate primarily through direct expression in the early stages. It operates through emotional accumulation. She remembers how she felt around you more than what you said to her. That feeling becomes the real language of attraction. And when that feeling is repeated enough times, it creates what feels like inevitability. She stops asking herself if she likes you. She starts noticing she already responds differently to you compared to others. Her body relaxes when you are present. Her thoughts return to you without effort. And still, she says nothing, because for her, Saying it too early would feel like losing control of something she hasn't fully understood yet. So she waits, not because she is playing games, but because she is trying to confirm whether what she feels is stable enough to survive reality. This is the part most men misinterpret. They think silence means absence, but in many cases, silence is where the deepest emotional processing is happening. She is not away from you emotionally. She is inside the experience, trying to understand its depth without destroying it through premature expression. So when she finally reaches the point where she is about to admit she has loved you since the beginning, it is not sudden. It is the result of hundreds of micromoments that you may have forgotten, but she never did. And the strange truth is, she may have been closer to loving you in silence than she ever was in words. There is something even more uncomfortable for most men to hear, and it is this. Sometimes, she knows she loves you long before she feels safe enough to admit it, even to herself, because admitting it changes everything. It turns something internal into something real, something vulnerable, something that can be lost. So she delays the moment of truth by doing something subtle. She rationalizes it. She tells herself she is just comfortable around you, that you are different, but not necessarily special, that she is not ready, or too busy, or focused on other things. But beneath those explanations, something else is happening. The emotional attachment is already forming its roots deeper than her logic can reach. Carl Jung would describe this as the conflict between the conscious mind and the unconscious pull of the anima and animus dynamic. In simpler terms, she is being drawn toward a feeling that does not require permission from her rational thinking. And that is what makes it both powerful and unsettling for her at the same time. Because when a woman begins to feel real emotional attachment, she doesn't just think about you. She starts to experience emotional interference. Her mood shifts when you are not around. Her attention drifts during moments that should have nothing to do with you. And she begins to notice that other people do not trigger the same internal response you do. But instead of immediately embracing it, she often resists it. Not because she doesn't want love, but because she wants certainty. She wants to know that what she is feeling is not just temporary emotional excitement. So she observes you longer than necessary. She replays conversations in her mind. She studies your consistency across different situations. And here is the part most men never consider. During this stage, even your absence becomes meaningful, not because you are doing anything, but because your absence creates space for her feelings to grow without interruption. Silence does not weaken attachment here. It intensifies it. This is why she can seem distant at times, even when she cares deeply. It is not rejection, it is internal negotiation. She is trying to decide whether what she feels is safe enough to surrender to. And if you have ever experienced a woman who suddenly became more emotionally expressive after a period of distance, you have witnessed this process completing itself. The internal resistance finally breaks, not because something changed outside, but because something inside her could no longer deny what had already been forming for a long time. So when she finally reaches the point where she is about to admit she has been in love with you since she met you, understand this clearly. It is not the beginning of her love, it is the moment she stops fighting it. And what she is really confessing is not just that she loves you, but that she has been carrying that truth quietly through every moment she pretended she hadn't. By the time she reaches the point of confession, something important has already happened inside her that most men completely overlook. She has already attached emotional meaning to you that is no longer dependent on your actions in the present moment. In her mind, you are not being evaluated anymore, you are being remembered. And memory is far more powerful than attention. This is where female psychology becomes deeply misunderstood by men who assume attraction is always about what is happening right now. In reality, much of her emotional world is built on accumulation. She is not reacting only to who you are today. She is reacting to who you were in all the moments she quietly stored inside herself. Carl Jung described the unconscious mind as something that preserves emotional impressions long after the conscious mind has moved on. And this is exactly what happens here. She is no longer experiencing isolated moments with you. She is experiencing the emotional weight of all those moments combined. So when she looks at you, she is not just seeing your current behavior. She is feeling the totality of everything she has associated with you. Safety, curiosity, nervous excitement, calmness in chaos, even confusion. All of it blends into a single emotional identity that your presence represents. And here is where it becomes even more intense. At this stage, she begins to protect her feelings without realizing she is doing it. She becomes careful not because she is losing interest, but because she is afraid of losing control over something that already feels meaningful. She may delay conversations. She may avoid direct emotional exposure. She may even act slightly inconsistent. But underneath all of that is a simple truth. She is trying to make sure that what she feels is not something she will regret revealing too soon, because once she admits it, she cannot unfeel it. And for many women, that is the real fear, not love itself, but vulnerability after love is named. So she continues observing. She watches how you handle pressure, how you respond when you are misunderstood, how you behave when you are not being appreciated. These moments matter more to her than grand gestures ever will, because they reveal emotional stability. And if you remain steady in those moments, something inside her relaxes further. The resistance weakens. The internal debate quiets. Not completely, but enough for emotion to begin winning over logic. This is also where distance becomes psychologically interesting. If you pull away slightly, not out of manipulation but natural space, she does not simply forget you. Instead, her mind fills the gap with reflection. She begins to feel your absence as a contrast to your presence, and contrast strengthens emotional clarity. And slowly, the realization forms inside her that what she feels is no longer uncertain. It has weight, it has consistency, it has history. So when she finally reaches the moment where she is about to admit she has been in love with you since she met you, it is not a sudden emotional explosion. It is the quiet collapse of resistance that has been weakening for a long time. And what comes out of her mouth is only the final stage of something that was already alive long before she ever spoke it. There is a point in her emotional process that most men never recognize while it is happening, and by the time they do, it is already too late to misunderstand it. It is the moment she stops trying to figure you out and starts trying to keep you in her life in any form that feels safe. This shift is subtle. You will not always see dramatic behavior. In fact, she may even appear more composed. But internally, something significant has changed. The uncertainty is gone, replaced by emotional direction. She is no longer asking herself what you are. She is asking herself what you mean to her. And meaning is far more dangerous than curiosity. Carl Jung would describe this as the transition from projection to integration. At first, she projects ideas onto you, ideas of strength, mystery, stability, or emotional depth. But over time, as she experiences you in real situations, those projections either collapse or become integrated into a real emotional bond. When integration happens, you are no longer just a person she is observing. You become part of her inner emotional structure. That is why even small interactions with you begin to carry disproportionate emotional weight. A simple message can change her mood. A delayed response can create internal tension. A calm conversation can restore her emotional balance, not because you are controlling her, but because her nervous system has learned to associate you with emotional regulation. And here is where many men misread the situation completely. They assume that if she is not constantly expressive, she is not deeply invested. But in reality, deeper emotional attachment often looks quieter, not louder. It becomes internalized rather than displayed. She starts thinking about future scenarios without even realizing it. Not necessarily romantic fantasies in the dramatic sense, but subtle emotional positioning. Would I feel safe with him long term? Can I trust how I feel when I am around him? Does he remain the same when life gets difficult? These questions are not spoken, they are lived internally. And when the answers keep coming back consistently, something shifts again. She stops resisting the feeling and starts preparing for expression. But even then, she does not rush, because for her, emotional confession is not just about honesty. It is about timing, safety, and emotional certainty. This is why the admission often comes later than men expect, because by the time she says it, she is not discovering her love. She is confirming it out loud after living with it privately for a long time. And in many cases, She has already tested every fear she had about you and found that the feeling still remains. That is what makes the confession so powerful, not the words themselves, but the fact that she has already lived through all the moments that could have made her walk away and didn't. When she finally says it, when she admits she has been in love with you since the day she met you, what you are hearing is not the beginning of her emotion. You are hearing the end of her internal resistance. And that distinction changes everything about how you understand her confession. Because by this point, love is not a surprise to her anymore. It is something she has already lived with, negotiated with, and carried through silence for a long time. The words are simply the moment the truth becomes shared instead of private. Carl Jung would frame this as the unconscious becoming conscious. What was once hidden in feeling, instinct, and emotional pattern now enters language. But language is always late. It arrives after experience has already written the story. So when she tells you, do not mistake it for sudden intensity. It is actually emotional completion. She has already tested you in ways you never noticed. Not with formal challenges, but with emotional distance, with timing, with observation of your consistency under pressure. She has already measured how you behave when things are not easy, when attention is not guaranteed, when connection is not being actively maintained. And if you remained stable through those unseen moments, that stability becomes the foundation of her attachment. This is why her confession often feels deeper than expected, because it is not based on a single moment. It is based on accumulated emotional certainty. Every small memory she kept, every feeling she didn't explain, every silent observation she made, all converge into that one sentence. And now she is no longer just feeling love privately. She is risking it being seen. That is the real vulnerability. Because once spoken, love can be accepted, misunderstood, or even rejected. But before it is spoken, it exists in a protected space where it cannot be touched. So when she crosses that line, she is not just confessing love, she is choosing exposure over silence. And this is where many men either rise or fail in understanding. Some try to overreact emotionally, thinking they need to match intensity instantly. Others dismiss it, not realizing the depth behind it. But the truth is simpler. What she is really asking in that moment is not just, do you feel the same? But was everything I felt real to you too? And how you respond determines whether that emotional truth becomes connection or regret. Because love like this is not fragile in the beginning, it is fragile at the moment it is spoken. Now answer this honestly to yourself and drop it in the comments. Have you ever had someone show love in silence long before they ever said a word and only realized it after it was already too late? And if this made you reflect even a little, like the video, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs to understand this before they miss it again.